Welcome to Game Changer with Elfrida Pretorius, as she attempts to help you improve your life. And now, here's Elfrida Pretorius.
Hello and welcome to Game Changer. This is the program where we, of course, shine a light on anything that could possibly help us to improve on our games in life. In a fairly recent past, we explored the topic of anti-aging with Veronica Gray of the Eternal Youth Empower. And Veronica is joining us again today, but we have another guest with us on the line, and her name is Dr. Janni Lloyd, who's from Australia. The commonality between my two guests is that they both passionately believe that immortality is a very real possibility for the human being here on Earth. Hello again, I'm Elfrida Pretorius, your weekly host on Game Changer, and I'm wondering if you have explored the possibilities of not ever dying. Or do you believe that that is the stuff that fairy tales are made of? Now, what would you say if I told you that one of my guests today is a medical doctor who gave her conventional practice up and is now exploring the possibilities of living forever on this planet? She has written a booklet titled Physical Immortality, The Mass Possibility. Dr. Lloyd, Janni, and Veronica, both of you, welcome to Game Changer.
Good afternoon, Elfrida. Hello, everybody who's listening. Thank you.
Let me start by asking you, Janni, and what was it in Orthodox medicine that made you turn your back on that career and forge a new one in a field where people probably raise their eyebrows at the choice you have made?
I was always much more interested in the emotional and psychological aspects of medicine and how that impacted on people with disease and the creation of disease. So when I went through my own spiritual awakening back in the early 1990s, I just found that I wanted to work exclusively at that level, spiritual, emotion, psyche. So the obvious step was to go into alternative medicine and explore that.
All right. Now, when you say you were more interested in the emotional and psychological effect that illness had on people, Did you already then at that point realize that mind and body is one thing and that where the mind goes, the body follows?
Very much so, and very much the emotional component of that as well. Yeah.
Okay.
I can see it, very obviously.
All right. Now, we've got Veronica with us here, and Veronica is one of the founding members of the Eternal Youth Empire, and they have a fantastic idea, a theory of how we can stay young.
Yes.
But what I want to ask you, Janni, is without going into a long medical explanation, is it possible for you to tell us why you think that physical immortality is a real possibility?
Okay. Well, the way I see it now is that we're going through a paradigm shift away from the belief system that physical death is inevitable to a belief system that says physical death is a choice.
Well, before you go on, let me just ask you this.
Yeah.
You say that we are moving towards a different paradigm. How do you know that?
It's a feeling within my psyche. It's to do with what I've observed. It's the divine connection that I feel. Very much liken it to the shift in humanity from the earth being flat to the earth being round, and the explorations that needed to occur to validate that. So Columbus had to get in his boat and sail around the earth, even though the earth was round before he got in the boat. And a lot of us as pioneers are moving into this understanding of physical immortality, making that choice like getting in the boat, and then we need to sail around and validate it for ourselves. So I've been on that journey for 16 years.
Wow. Veronica, let me ask you this. What sort of feedback are you getting from people who come into contact with your theory of how to reverse age and actually become younger?
Well, like Dr. Lloyd, I've been doing this for 11 years, and even if 2 people a week, and the only reason I'm saying that is because in the last week I've come across 2 people who started using the 6 newly discovered and never before published secrets of eternal youth and immortality, which is the title of our for Eternal Youth Empire. One of those people is actually sitting next to me quietly just as an observer. His name is Von Lanius. He's a motocross rider, and he is only 18 years old. but even he has been using the secret. So you're never too young to sort of maintain your youthfulness and immortality. And the other person is his father, Terry Lanius. He's not sitting next to me, but he is, to be polite, I don't know, maybe close to 60. And he's using our one main secret to eternal youth, which is free to try, which is always only go right.
Right.
And he is noting a profound difference, and he's only been doing it for a week. And like that paper that Dr. Lloyd wrote on physical immortality, where they did that study that only lasted 5 days, where people started living as if they were 20 years younger, pretending that they were 20 years younger, and it took only 5 days to notice a difference.
Yeah.
Well, that must be the mind and body connection. So, Dr. Lloyd, let me ask you, I want to quote a very interesting part from your booklet, where you wrote, you look at physical immortality from the viewpoint of spirituality. And now I quote, "The philosophy of physical immortality is one of living from an open, loving heart, being focused in the now, creating much joy, abundance, and freedom." And then you say, throughout spiritual literature, advanced immortals are reported to be able to dematerialize and rematerialize their bodies at will, teleport from place to place, and manifest whatever material requirement they have from thin air. End quote. They have perfected liberty and can move from dimension to dimension, taking their physical body with them, and that's where the quote ends. Now, is the thought process behind physical immortality that death could be sidestepped and that we could access these other dimensions at will?
Absolutely. I see the physical immortal way is sort of like making physical death obsolete, in that our old way was to reinvent ourselves. We tended to have to go through physical death and reincarnate. And if you take yourself back just 40 years or so, or 50 years, the majority of people would have one career, one spouse, one house they lived in, and so on. And then they would retire and they would die, and they would come back and reinvent themselves in some other life, circumstance. But these days, people are reinventing themselves very quickly, and it's not unusual for people to have a career for just 10 years or so and then reinvent themselves. So, and with those, it's about embracing change more easily. Previously, 50 years or so ago, we were very stagnant in the sense that we didn't like change. So embracing change is an important part of physical immortality. And if you embrace it in the little ways, you don't need the big death thing happening.
Well, here's a question that I think is one a lot of people are going to be asking when they hear that. I look at the world that we live in right now, and what I see is a huge amount of low-level vibrations. I can't say it any other way. There's war. There's lots of war going on. There is all sorts of anxiety going on. There is emotional stress going on. There's suppression going on. I can go on and on and on about that. And here's the thing that I'm wondering. How ready do you think are the people of our world, being under the kind of stress that they are, to accept a concept such as immortality?
I think some of us are ready. I think this is going to evolve over around about 100 years or so. It may even be quicker than that, because what I see, that reflection, that's a reflection of our death programming. And once we tune more into the ongoing physical immortal programming, then that projection and reflection will go. It's a very complex understanding to get across in a few minutes.
Now I understand that, but I have to catch on to the word that you just mentioned a few times, and that was programming. and that
Yep.
you said that, we have to get used to a different kind of programming. And,
right.
in the booklet that you wrote that I found very fascinating and interesting, you talked about, in the 1800s, people only got about 40 years old, and, now, we grow to be about 80, and
right.
that in another 100 years, we'll probably get to be about 160 years old. And we, I thought that I always say logic is king.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
have to use logic. Logic is king.
That's
And so,
right.
you think about these concepts, and the one question I ask myself is, and why not? What
Exactly.
is stopping us from doing that? Because everything is really the mind steering us. I mean, we have the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, then we have the superconscious mind, and all of these minds are connected through universal mind. So we really are all part of the same body. Is that not true?
That is so true, yes, absolutely. And, I see no reason why it can't unfold in the way that we're thinking. And certainly for me, it's a vision that I aspire to. I would like to see a very peaceful Earth. And I don't think there's many people that wouldn't like to see that.
Well, especially during these times that we're living in.
I see that once we have peace between matter and spirit, or yin and yang, and we've created a bridge between the two instead of being polarized opposites, then we will see the reflection of peace out in the world.
Right. Now, don't you think that what the human being needs to do, first of all, or most of all, is get to know him or herself?
Absolutely.
And understand who we are, right?
Absolutely.
In the next question I'm going to ask, I'm thinking of universal law specifically and how that influences our reality. And I can think of a few of these laws that will apply here, but let's just take the law of cause and effect. And,
Yep.
I'm aiming this question towards the whole question of immortality, yes or no. Would I be accurate in assuming that immortality would have to be accompanied, if you like, by an advanced state of consciousness also?
Yes, advanced in the sense of, I don't even like the word healed, but like to be able to embrace all of reality as part of self. So there's no separation in that sense. So,
Right.
But it's not advanced in the sense that you need to be godlike. I think if we, buy into this idea that you have to be a total god and to claim it, then we put it outside too far beyond ourselves. Does that make
What
any
is
sense?
your? No, I understand that. Well, what is it? What is your take on reincarnation, multiple lives?
Yeah, I feel very much that has been part of the way. That has been what we've been acting out. But now we're choosing, well, certainly I'm choosing physical immortality, which is a step beyond that. It's sort of like reincarnating yourself without going through physical death.
That is an absolutely fascinating concept. That is something, according to you, then, that we could overcome and outlive, and it can become almost like a used piece of clothing. We don't have to do that anymore. We can actually put on a different garment and keep wearing the same garment for the rest of time. Well, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Veronica, let me ask you, in the work that you're doing, and I know you have a very sweet nature, and every time I talk to you, I can hear that. And I sometimes wonder, is she getting younger by the day now when I talk to you? Let me ask you this, Veronica. When you work with people, when people come to you and ask you about the Eternal Youth Empire, who are the people who are interested in those concepts?
Well, pretty much every single person I meet, because if you spend even a day with me, whether it's a lunch date or just a couple hours, if you're at all observant, you'll notice I never make a left turn. I only go right, because that's the secret. And if somebody asks me, hey, why do you keep doing those turns? I'll explain it to them. One of the last August, which was just 2 months ago, I was at a charity event for the Pirates of the Caribbean, and a couple of the pirates, Lee Ehrenberg, the guy who says, hello, puppet, and the little guy, Martin Kleba, they noticed right away, because every time I got up from the table, I only made right turns.
Right.
So they asked me, they're like, what are you doing? And so I told them, honestly, and I said, well, if you really want to know, on a subatomic level, the minute you start decomposing or aging for whatever reason, that's the only time our atoms all of a sudden start going to the left. And if you believe that we're the microcosm of the macrocosm, then if you never go left, you'll never decompose. So for the rest of the day, they all started twirling around everywhere.
Wow. Well, you know what? I would be very interested in hearing Dr. Lloyd's views on that theory just in a few seconds. But I just want to remind our listeners, this is Game Changer, and I'm Elfrida Pretorius, talking today to Dr. Janni Lloyd and Veronica Gray about immortality and its possibility in the here and the now. Veronica heads up the Eternal Youth Empire in California, and her theory is based on the fact that all beings begin to age when the electrons begin to spin in a leftward motions around the neutron. First of all, Veronica, I want to know, how did you connect with Janni? And then I would like to hear Dr. Janni's views on your theory. Just tell us how you met each other.
Well, I got a great email from Dr. Lloyd saying that she was sort of on the same path, and she noticed that we were based in California, and just like you, we should all, like minds think alike, we should get together and see where we can collaborate. And now I'm finally heading down to Southern California for the first time in 6 months, and I look forward to meeting up with Dr. Lloyd and talking about her experiences, because I know she just came back from some entire immortalist, an entire sanctuary for immortals in Arizona, something like that, leading workshops there.
An immortalist community, yes.
An immortalist community, that's a fascinating concept. Well, Dr. Lloyd, tell me then, enlighten the listeners and me too, what are your views on the theories of the Eternal Youth Empire?
I haven't had a lot of time to look at them really closely, but certainly several of the principles I agree with. The one of the symmetry between the body, the connecting of the right and left side of the body, the right and the left brain, I think is very important. To me, that's the balance and the communication between the yin and the yang, creating that bridge that's been separate, that's been polarized within our community and within our bodies. And once we have that left-right communication fully balanced within us, then I think that creates greater levels of life and certainly brings in this momentum towards physical immortality.
Well, you know what is really interesting about that left-right connection? I actually interviewed a very interesting man a little while ago by the name of Otto Siegel, who wrote a book, Yes, You Are a Genius, Whether You Know It or Not. Right. And in this book, he also talks about the left and right connection of the brain and how important it is to unlock our own specific genius.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well,
we use such a small part of our brain. I was just looking at some statistics in the last day or so about the human brain, and it contains 100 billion neurons and 60 trillion synaptic connections in the cerebral cortex. I mean, is that amazing or what? We use such a small portion of it. It's a super mega supercomputer.
Well, it is a computer.
Yeah, and we're not using hardly any of it. We have enormous untapped potential. That I think some of that potential leads to physical immortality.
Well, let me ask both of you, don't you also think that one of the biggest obstacles that you run into with your respective theories and what you are pursuing is the conditioned mind of the average human being, which says, well, this is the way that it is, and we've done this way for the past 5,000 years, so why don't you and your theories go take a hike? So what I mean by that is that there is a resistance because we are, in fact, creatures of habit. And let me just, this is a question also to both of you. Don't you think that it's one of the toughest things for us to overcome is those old habits that we have, because we so like to go down the same road over and over again because it makes us feel safe. So if you come along, Dr. Lloyd, and you say, well, you know what, you can actually live forever, then people look at you funny.
Well, they used to. They don't look at me that's so funny anymore. They get excited, a lot of them, and not many people like physical death too much. They don't like the pain and suffering that tends to go with that scenario. So a lot of people are looking for answers at this time, and they're feeling that momentum within their own being, and they're wanting something new. But sure, there's resistance there to those old habits, and it does take courage to step forward and be the pioneer, and to it takes courage to encourage others to find that space within themselves. But the rewards are quite enormous.
Right. Well, and Veronica, I'm sure that you've also felt, or maybe had the experience, that it takes courage to see something through that you really strongly believe in, and that you have to have the ability to just shrug off other people's negative comments and say, well, if you don't want to go, if you want to go to the left, then you do, but I'm going to go to the right, and that's my choice, right?
Well, I have to say that so far when I explain it, one of the things that we like to do is we like to explain our theories in layman's terms and make sure that everyone, with a 5th grade reading level can understand what we're saying. And everybody seems to be like, that actually makes sense. So I'm not expecting them all to start doing right turns, but so far, from the Buck Institute of Anti-Aging, which is one of the only 3 in the entire world, to people like Dr. Lloyd, so far people are like, well, it makes sense. And a lot of theories take time to take hold, even though they make sense. And, Galileo was killed for his beliefs, so I'm lucky that we're lucky we don't have to suffer those kind of fates. And also, some of Hollywood is doing a good job of paving the way. I mean, the movie that's coming out in December, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which is starring Brad Pitt and directed by David Fincher, 2 people I would kill to work with. It's about a person whose age actually reverses. I highly recommend your listeners to view this film, because I've seen previews and it looks exactly... So there is a level of consciousness and spirituality arising in the world regarding immortality and eternal youth.
Right.
What I learned so much from reading this piece of work that Dr. Lloyd put on her blog, Physical Immortality, The Mass Possibility. I didn't know that, your liver regenerates itself every 4 days, that the cells in your body are constantly renewing themselves. So to say that you're aging, it's like, that's completely a choice. You can tell yourself, I'm brand new my skin's new every 2 days. I mean, it literally is.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Right.
The book Ageless Body, Timeless Mind by Deepak Chopra is an amazing piece of work, and incredible experiments and all sorts of things he's quoted in there that really make you think again about the reality that you've been living in. So, I highly recommend it.
It all comes back to one of the things that I firmly believe in, and that is that each and every one of us are creating our own realities, and coupled with that is nothing in your life changes until you change the way that you think. So if this is then all paradigm, and if we have the ability to construe a reality for ourselves by the way that we think, then why on earth can we not create a younger reality, right?
I agree, and also I'd like to say that since Dr. Lloyd is mentioning a book that influenced her a lot, there's a great book that's just receiving a lot of publicity right now. It's by Dr. Bruce Lipton. I don't know if either of you have heard of it. It's called The Biology of Belief.
I know of it.
Basically, he has been working on stem cells for over 20 years. And what he's saying is the same thing we're all saying, is that it turns out that your cells are not programmed by genetics, which people think, we're genetically predetermined to die. He's come to the conclusion after 20 years of stem cell research that your cells are influenced by your energy and environment.
Right. Energy is the key word.
His is called the Biology of Belief. It's all what you believe. If you believe you're going to die at 80, you probably will.
Janni, I want to mention one more aspect of your booklet, which is a very interesting piece, and I'm going to suggest that our listeners go to your blog and read it. In there you say the following. You say, what I see for the individual is a move away from struggle into flow and ease, connecting fully with their own truth, direction, and creativity, allowing themselves to be fully in their joy and supporting others to do the same. Loving themselves and others unconditionally. Perfect health requires all of this to occur. Now, I find this particularly interesting because I've always said mind and body is one thing. Where the mind goes, the body follows. So how would you get people to move away from struggling and begin to flow? What direction do you give them, or what clues do you give them to do that?
I think the three most powerful qualities to work with are praise, love, and gratitude. Praising the divine in all things, being grateful for all of life, and loving oneself unconditionally. And when we have that unconditional love for self, we automatically have it for others. So I think they are cornerstones of this journey, and this is how we can move our hearts into this very open state where we embrace the uniqueness of everybody and the uniqueness of all aspects of ourselves.
Right. Praise, love, and gratitude. That's very powerful.
It is very powerful.
Now, Dr. Lloyd, presently our world is going through much stress and strain on many levels. We talked about that earlier in our program. And I'm reminded of what many wise people of the past have said about these times that we are living in. You know, individuals such as Nostradamus was one who predicted this. Then there's the Egyptians and the Mayans, and the list goes on and on. It certainly does look as though we are moving into a phase of great change, one in which excessive structures of power and control seems to be torn down. Do you think that this is what is going on in our world, and do you think that this is part of the expansion of consciousness that is needed for people to understand concepts such as immortality?
Yes, I do. I think it's part of it's just the ending of an old way of being and the incoming of a new way. And it's like if you want to build a new house on the same block of land, you have to get rid of the old house before you can build a new house, or you need to at least renovate the old house to make it new. So it's sort of like that. It's a renovation thing, and it will seem as though things are dying and ending, but in their place there's this metamorphosis occurring, and the new is coming through. And it can be a lot easier than we think it can be. You know, It doesn't have to be so much struggle in the change process. If we embrace it slowly and gently, it doesn't have to be all drama.
No, I agree with you. And when we talk about immortality, it makes me think of death inadvertently, I think. And I've always thought to myself, even when I was a young child, I thought to myself, well, first of all, I hated funerals. And the only funeral I've ever been to was my father's. And I don't go to, I have a thing, I say I don't do funerals because I think they're doing it wrong. I think what you should be doing if somebody does die is celebrate their life and not mourn. And, and I think that maybe that is part of the mindset of the human being, that, we so hold on to the physical form because we think that's all that it is. That's all that there is. I don't think that's all that there is, but I am completely fascinated with your mindset but maybe it's a different programming that we have to take on, that life in fact could be eternal. I'm fascinated with that.
Yes, and it doesn't mean stagnation either. It means ongoing evolvement and liberty. It's a mindset of huge liberty. It's not stagnation, which a lot of people start to think. And as has been recorded in the literature of advanced immortals, that they can in time learn to teleport and go from dimension to dimension. And so anything that one feels one can access by going through the death process, they can actually access in time as an immortal. And So it's the ultimate liberty.
Now, I just want to tell our listeners, unfortunately, there's been a power failure of some sort, and we've lost Veronica along the way, the connection, and so I'm sorry about that, but that's just one of the technical things we have to deal with from time to time. Dr. Lloyd, this discussion has been absolutely fascinating, to say the least, and you definitely have tickled my fancy. I want to read more about this and learn more about this and investigate everything that there is to investigate. So where do we send listeners who want to learn more about what you do, the things that you write and the work that you do? Do you have a website, or where do we send them?
I have a blog at vivarever.gaia.com, and so they can look at my physical immortality, their mass possibility there, and then they can actually email me direct at vivarever at bigpond.com.
Okay, just the blog. Can we just spell that nicely?
VIVAEVER .gaia GAIA.com.
Okay, thank you. And I know Veronica's website is the Eternal youthempire.com. Dr. Lloyd, this has been an absolute pleasure. We've had a stimulating discussion about all sorts of wonderful possibilities. Many thanks for sharing your enlightened views with us here on Game Changer, and I look forward to seeing more of your work in the future.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on and sharing my understandings with your